We got everybody? We got everybody back?
Yes, we're all here.
Wait, no,
We're all right here.
So everybody's. Anyway, I think so. Y'all, everybody's next month's meeting is a normal day. Wait. So, right on that. Kelly said. Yeah.
18 and then January, I think she did 15.
Right, it could be the third Tuesday. Okay, y'all ready? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call the open session to order. It's let's call it 12:55. And assuming we don't have anybody signed up for comment period, so we'll go to item 7, presentation and discussion of the update report by the Director of Electric Utilities or his designee regarding customer service, business center practices, procedures and policies, customer concerns and complaints, billing forms and procedures, and LP&L staffing and performance. Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, of course, early in the month we had some power outages, and so on page 12 and 13 you can see that social media really spiked on October the 5th when we had the major outage kind of east, southeast side of town. Well, actually it was all over town, but the worst outage was east side of town. But we're starting to use these social media tools to communicate with our customers in all sorts of situations, and it's interesting that you really see an uptick when we do have a major outage. So they're using these tools, and we're trying to use them as well to communicate with our customers. On page 16, had good months in customer service. Key performance indicators were met. It's been a while since we could say that, but the average wait time was within our goal. Service level was greater than 90%, and the abandon rate was in the range of acceptable. So we met our performance goals for the month, which is commendable. And then meter reader error rate for the second month in a row was below the target goal of 0.3%. So doing good there.
Dave, yes, Rick, if you don't mind. A couple things on page 15.
Yes, sir.
Just curious as to why we did 377 megawatts. What day that is? 30th. Yeah, on the 30th. Yeah, I know it doesn't exactly correlate, but
right.
Temperature was 65.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't really explain why you have the sudden increase in load on that particular day. It doesn't look like the weather was, was anything out of the ordinary. So let me follow up on that before we try to find out. It might have been a data error or something. Okay, I'll check.
And the project helping hand over the past few months has been trending down a little bit.
Which
project helping hand? I don't know if that's anything for you guys per se, but
well,
do you think that our little committee, our HR committee, or project helping need to take that on and kind of look into that?
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I can't really explain it. The economy is doing good. Unemployment is at a low rate. That's generally when you would expect it. People would be in a better position to donate. I don't know. It may have been a while since we marketed that Project Helping Hand.
We do it almost on a quarterly basis in terms of like actually sending things out, concerts and things like that. But we also do a bunch of social media. And over the next month, we'll do a bunch of social media heading into Christmas because we'll have a bunch of stuff saying, heading into holiday season, make sure you look out your friends and neighbors. But no matter what amount of marketing we've ever done, it's always been about that same amount.
Gotcha.
It's a fairly narrow range, from about 30 36 to 4,500 gallon.
Yeah, there is that trend though,
It is a trend.
in spite of all our efforts to keep it from running.
We'll look and see about doing some more marketing, and certainly if the committee wants to get together and talk about things we can do, that'd be fine.
Along those same lines, and I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting the graph correctly. The graph below that on the call center deal,
Yes, sir.
so we get about 25,000 calls a month. Right? So
Right.
if there's 20 working days. I mean, it works out to about 150 calls an hour.
1,500 calls a day. Sound about right?
That's correct. Mondays and Fridays are the highest, but on average, that's correct.
In a 8-hour day. And I was just kind of working the calculator. I mean, that's an incredible amount of calls. I'm thinking about it. And,
What's that reflection? System breakdowns, just complaints about cost? All right.
well, I think it's probably everything. It's people, it's their calls.
Move-ins, move-outs,
Move-ins,
payment arrangements,
Yeah.
billing inquiries, all of the above.
But,
Do you track coffee?
How do we track it by topic? Is it? They're asking if we
We
track it by
have
the
certain
calls.
categories. We have rates categories, move in, move out, and I-bills. They're very generic.
A lot of times people will call for their, just their overall bill, so there may not be any one particular utility that may be the focus of that conversation, or they may call about one initially and then the call navigates towards other topics too, so we see that an awful lot of that.
And so that reflects then the handling time, which is roughly 5 minutes, I guess.
Right.
Works between 4.5 to 5.5 minutes, I guess, is the average. So, but just the sheer volume of calls is quite impressive. Yeah. Sure.
David, does that performing arts center really have a 4,000 kVA?
That's probably the transformer capacity. I doubt there's a band would be that high.
That's a lot of load.
Yeah, I need to look at it. I don't know if we've got the,
Oh, that's on page 21.
yeah.
4,000.
I'll see what kind of load information we've got. If we've got the NDC load breakdown or the architectural.
Well, I know it's going to be a big customer, but I was a bit amazed when I saw that too.
Yeah. Those spotlights that shine on the stage are pretty bright.
Yeah, of course, that's, but that only happens when they have a show.
That's true.
Any other questions for Dave on the reports? I'm sorry, Dave, we probably interrupted. You were headed.
No, I was done. We did have about 5 new commercial customers added to the account, scattered all over town, not in any one particular area. But I think Andy did have some information to report as well.
Yeah, we were just going to give you just a brief update on AMI. I know there was quite a bit of question on that last time, and wanted to go over some of the success that we've had over the last several weeks since we talked to you. So Todd Stoker with TNG Utility Solutions is going to kind of give you all of that update again today. So I'll turn it over to Todd.
Welcome, Todd. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. As Andy mentioned, there was a lot of conversation and questions last month. So we wanted to come back and report kind of the things that have happened since last month and some of the things we've done. Just a brief agenda. I only have a few slides to go through. I just wanted to set expectations of what we really are trying to do in this next phase. give you an update on where we're at exactly in the project and the schedule, give you some information about the installation crews that are going to be going out and working in the community, give a little bit of overview of how the interaction with customers is going to be, and then we do have some equipment to show you guys exactly what it is we are putting out in the field and what everything looks like. Feel free to interrupt and ask me questions along the way. But the project's really transitioning into what we're calling the initial installation phase of the project, and I want to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page as to what the expectations are. If we look at the slide at the bottom, this is really what the customers are going to see. So during the initial installation phase, they're going to continue to receive a bill that is manually read exactly the way they're doing it today. So all of the work that we're doing with putting meters out in the field and doing this initial installation is really internally focused to make sure that we have everything working correct and do the iterations. So, the customer's experience is they're getting a bill with manual meter reads. We won't actually start using the meter reads from the AMI system until we go live, and that's looking like February timeframe, for February of next year. During that period of time, we are going out, we are installing, and it's an iterative process. So what we're doing is we're really working out the processes and any of the challenges. All the development work is done for the interfaces, and we're transitioning into this next phase where we install, we do testing, we do validation, then we'll go back and we'll install some more, and then we'll do some more testing and validation to make sure things are working correctly. We cycle through all of that. Once all of that work is done and we're satisfied that the system is working and performing the way we expect it to, we'll go into the system acceptance phase. And that is a very structured, rigorous set of testing to verify that nothing's changing and everything's fixed. So the iterations are over at that point, and we go through system acceptance. So, in this period of time, kind of between now and February, we'll be going out and we'll put some meters in. We'll take that input, we'll go back out and put some more in, and there will be iterations based on what we find. The real key, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up to the board, is we are still in the testing phase, so we aren't actually using anything that we collect from that until we do hit that go live period. And we certainly will be presenting to the board when we're at that phase, I'm sure. With that said, I guess you have to point it, maybe you have to press the right button.
But keep trying. I've had problems with the remote today, so maybe lower that.
Thank you for blaming the remote when really it's my failure. We spent some time last month talking about kind of where we were at, and we were tracking some slips in the schedule. This is updated, and this went in the board package last week. There is a lot of activity going on, and there's a lot of things that have been completed since this was put together to go in the package to today. But some of the things that we've completed, the software integration I mentioned, the initial installation letters were sent to customers, so they were notified that they may or may not be getting a meter in the next few months. We completed first article testing. That was a major accomplishment and milestone that we achieved. Last month we spent some time talking about the vendor project team realignment. And we did do a lot of focused effort in this area. The vendor did replace their project manager and also their business analyst on the project. And since the new folks have come in, we have seen incredible amount of focus and improvement in all of the work that they've been doing. We also had an executive leadership review where David and the Itron folks got together and established a better relationship at the executive level for escalation, which thankfully we haven't had to utilize since we had that meeting. But there are quite a few accomplishments that have taken place. We began our initial installation October 30th. So that includes putting the network equipment out in the field. We approximately have 75% of the network installed, and then putting out the electric and water meters. We're expecting the rest of the network to be done. 16th is this week? No, Friday. So by the end of this week, we expect the rest of the network equipment to be in place. And we expect the meter installation to be complete by December 11th. And we're in that solution validation and testing phase. So the milestones up on the top of the chart here are the milestones that we've been tracking each month. And one of the things that I will say is the schedule has certainly stabilized. We have a much greater confidence in the schedule. The one item that I was most concerned with, which was the 500 electric meters that we weren't expecting to get until November 20th, they were actually delivered yesterday. So, my biggest concern area, we actually ended up a little bit ahead of schedule on, so that was good news. Whoops. Now the remote worked.
I did it.
Oh, you did that. Okay.
I'll step ahead.
So as we're going out there and installing, and we have one crew working right now, we will increase the number of crews as we start installing more meters. But this is a little bit of an overview of what is going to be out in the community. So they'll have a standardized fleet vehicle. They're going to be a white vehicle. They'll have a magnetic sticker on it that says City of Lubbock, identifies they're an authorized utility contractor, so there's a separation from LP&L, but still authorized by us. All the installers will have a badge with their photograph, their position, both the City of Lubbock Utilities as well as the Compass authorized utility contractor. And then the door hanger, which is left behind each time the installer visits the home. And Andy just handed out an example of what the door hanger will look like. But it really gives them the information, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that customer interaction in a minute. But that's really the basis of the crews that are going to be out there. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Like in my case, my electric meters and on the side of my house, so they have to come in my backyard. Will they come knock on the door or just go in my backyard? What will they do?
They will knock on your door. If you're home, they will let you know what they're here to do. If you're not home, they will go ahead and go in your backyard to gain access to the meter. When they finish the work, they will leave that door hanger behind on the door, whether they were successful or unsuccessful with the appropriate boxes checked on the door hanger. If they were not able to access your meter, your gate was locked and you weren't home, they'll check that and ask you to schedule an appointment. I think is that the next slide? Yeah. So why don't we talk about this, because this, and the process is going to be a little bit different depending on if it's in that initial installation phase or once we're live and we're going through the mass deployment. So the two are a little bit different just because of the goals of what we're trying to accomplish. So during the initial installation phase, this is strictly 500 electric customers. If we go up to the door, knock on the door, gain access to your meter, we successfully replace that meter, they're going to leave that door hanger behind, check that we successfully exchanged the meter. During the initial installation, if we cannot gain access, we're simply going to skip the home and move to the next one. So we're not going to try to schedule appointments and get to every home, because we're really just trying to get enough meters in the ground or installed that allow us to do the testing we need to do. And we're not going to try to gain access. If we knock on the door and someone says, no, I don't want you to do it, fine, no problem, we'll just move to the next one. That's during the initial installation phase, so it's a very simple process. And we've selected 700 or so homes that if we run into these cases of not being accessed, we have others to go through. So that's why we sent more letters than what we intended to install. During full deployment, so this is after we've gone live, after February, where we will have approximately 35 individuals split amongst 15 or 17 crews doing mass installation. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to walk up to the door, they'll knock on the door. If the customer is home, let them know that they need access. If they're not home, they will try to gain access to the meter. If it's successful, they'll leave the door tag behind. If it's unsuccessful, they'll check the box on that door tag that says, please call us to schedule an appointment. That will come into the LP&L call center, the number's listed there, and they'll schedule an appointment. If we haven't heard from them, then this automatic ongoing process is going to kick in, where on the first day after we tried to visit, we're going to try to make a phone call to schedule an appointment. If we don't get a hold of anybody the next day, we'll try to call them again. If we don't get a hold of anybody after 2 tries, then in the next 1 to 3 days, depending on where the crews are, we'll go back to that residence after business hours to try to catch the person at home. Maybe they work and they're not home during the days. If we can do the exchange then, we leave the door hanger and everything the same way we did before. If not, the next day we'll try one more time to schedule an appointment. If that's not successful, the last thing we'll do is we'll go one more time to that home. That's the process that our authorized contractor will follow. That process generally is going to take around up to 8 business days. A lot of it depends on when the weekends fall, when they try to install and that kind of thing, but it's approximately 8 business days. If unsuccessful, then they return that to us, and we call that a return to utility, where they give it back to us and say, we've done everything we can. LP&L, it's up to you to try to gain access. And then that will really fall into the process, like if we can't access a meter, to do a meter read. And we'll have processes to follow through that. This will generally get us 97 to 99% of the population will fall into this process. You'll get 1% or 2 that will come back through return to utility that will have to work with our field service group. Any questions on the interaction with the customers?
Well, I guess backing up from that, Todd, last month you were somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks behind where we sit tonight as far as where we were a month ago, 2 or 3 weeks.
We are still sitting, the schedule is very similar to what I discussed last meeting. So we haven't incurred further slip. I would caution to think that we're going to pull back to the very original schedule, because the original schedule had us going live in mid-January, mid to late January. The current schedule is showing a go live February 11th. So, we are stabilizing around February 11th. I'm optimistic that we've locked into that schedule and we're not going to continue to see further delays. And that's really through the stabilization work that we got with the vendor, with their team, and all the work that they've put in place.
So you don't expect to capture any of that slippage?
I would say I'm hopeful, but I wouldn't promise it.
And that's not a major issue, because, the ultimate go live, ultimately when we have everything deployed, that really has not going to interfere with the go live of our utility billing system, because that really ultimately, none of this billing activity is really going to be fully implemented until we go live with our new billing system. And so this slippage here that we experienced right off the bat doesn't really harm or slip that go live date on the billing system, and everything's going to go live at this point anyway.
Exactly, and what we're really looking at is how to get the deployment done in 11 months instead of 12, because that's where we can accelerate and make up time. So we do, as Andy indicated, get done with the majority of the installations before we go live with the new CIS system, which is the more important date.
You're not through yet. Are you going to show us what customers are going to see above ground with their water meter and their electric meter? You said you had some.
I have show and tell, so yes, why don't we put the lights back on and we'll pull that over. It's the part I like, Anisha.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm curious about the disposition of the 105,000 old meters. Do we have a buyer for them, or are we just going to toss them or what?
The disposal and removal of the old inventory is the responsibility of Itron, the vendor. So that's part of the.
Any credit for it?
We did get credit for it to basically the tune of, it was like $250,000 in disposal credit. Now, they will hold that inventory for 90 days for us in case there's any disputes where we have to go back to the old meter. But the ultimate disposal of the old equipment is the vendor's responsibility.
Yeah, I know that sometimes for that kind of equipment, there's a market for it in other countries, South America.
And frankly, I've done it, and I've been involved with other utilities that have tried to maximize the amount of return on the old withdrawn inventory, and it becomes a logistical headache and is generally speaking not worth the effort. Here you have an extremely amount of really old meters, which I think would even tilt that more in the not worth the effort category.
What's the factor?
But you said we're getting $250,000 every month.
There's a evaluation factor in the RFP, so I mean, it's kind of baked into the numbers that we're on.
So we don't have the responsibility to get rid of it.
Right, which is nice. So this is the long discussed network equipment, sometimes referred to as a CGR. There are 42 of these in the LP&L service territory that will collect all the reads. If you look closely around town, you will be able to spot them. I know where they are, and I still can't see them unless I'm parked. So they do blend in with the scenery.
They're on poles in the alley.
They're on poles in the alleys. They're all located within existing pole lines. Some of them are on new poles, some of them are on existing poles. There will be an additional 12 of those in the water-only territory when we get through the water-only territory. So that's kind of what these guys
Specs territory, so they won't be on the LPL.
What happens if we lose one of them by either accident or nature or whatever? Lightning?
Regardless of the reason, the support contract that we entered in with Itron is they're responsible for coming out, replacing and repairing, and reinstalling if a car hits a pole or one fails due to a storm or whatever. They have service level agreements where they'll come out and replace the collector and fix it within the time frame that we agreed on. One of the really nice things about the way the network's designed is you can lose any one of these and still get your reads through the system, through the redundancy and the other paths. So that way it's not an outage situation where you have to hurry up and get it fixed. You still want to get it fixed in a reasonable amount of time, because if the next one over also gets damaged, then you will experience an outage. But that grants you some additional time frame, to go out and fix it. That doesn't mean you have to go out in the middle of the night to do it. You can do it the next day.
So the chances of us not being able to build on a sizable section of town is pretty slim.
Correct.
So how many can we lose at the same time to maintain the redundancy?
It depends on where in town. I mean, if you lose one in the southwest corner of town and you lose one up in the northeast, you're probably okay. If you lose two in a 1 mile radius of each other, you may start creating gaps. So it really does depend on where your outage is. The time where you'll experience those kind of things is if you do have a significant event that will affect a large area in a region where you bring down 3 or 4 of them, tornado comes through or something like that. But then in that case, you're in.
We got bigger problems.
You have other things, so that's the collector. And I'll stick around after the meeting. I just wanted to show the example. This is an AMI electric meter. It's actually communicating right now to this collector and being able to bring reads back into the head end. These are the meters we're removing from customers' homes. So this is what they have today, this is what they'll have tomorrow. And I like to show the side by side because unless you're really looking for it or well informed, you really don't see the difference.
That's got the disconnect switch built into it?
This has a disconnect switch built into it. So if a customer moves in, instead of rolling a truck out to turn their electric on, they can do it from the business office and connect it. Maybe not as interesting for this audience, but also part of the project, is what we're going to be doing with the water meters. This lid is what covers the water meters today. So there's one of these for every house down every alley. You may not notice them, but they're there. What we end up doing, and this is a water meter, and the water meter is there today. This piece is being replaced with basically an AMI ready register. And this radio is being installed through a hole in the lid. So a customer who sees a lid today is going to see exactly that going forward. Again, unless you're really looking for it and you know what that little circle thing is, you're probably not going to notice it. All of this is in the vault under the ground where customers normally don't go looking. And that's pretty much the project to put the water modules installed. Yes, sir.
There's no value to any of that? I mean, there's obviously value to it, but for someone coming and just cut the cord, there's not anything in it that people are trying to take or do?
No, there really isn't. I mean, the value's in the brass. So, and the brass is already out there. So, you do have theft concerns around that, but those are things that you deal with on a weekly, daily basis. Now, if this wire between the two does get cut, this module is going to complain to the head end, and it will show up as a cut wire. That could possibly be a tamper where a customer knows that this is reporting the readings, and they think if they cut the wire, they're not going to get their readings, and then they won't get a bill, but that will show up as a tamper. So there will be a process and a business flow of how are we going to deal with those? How do we follow up on them, go out? And that's why you don't eliminate all of your field work with AMI. You just change some of the work you're doing.
Big improvement from what I got last ones I saw 10 years ago. Some of them had things sticking up above the ground. That was really a problem. Big problem.
Yes, the industry has certainly matured and developed some really nice technology.
What about hail? What about hail? What about sand? What about leaves? What things keep that thing from communicating?
As long as
Does that have a battery or is it connected to power?
that's the drop test, see if it works fine. There is a battery in here. The battery is designed to work and last 20 years. We are not expecting, I mean, the life expectancy of the system is shorter than the battery life. You asked about performance. Really, as long as anything that happens from this surface below won't affect performance. If this pit lid is flooded or buried in snow, covered with a dumpster, covered with dirt, that could affect the performance. And that's where, one, we're going to keep track and monitor what your read success rate is. It's one of the performance criteria. But, you know, as long as this is above ground or at the surface of the ground, you don't start affecting performance.
But if it was covered with snow, leaves, earth,
Snow and water, when it goes away, you know, none of this is on and off. It depends of degree. I've seen systems work under 3 feet of snow. I've seen them under an inch of water where it'll affect performance. It's on an individual basis, and there's a lot of other environmental factors that go into it. And that's part of the care and feeding of the system ongoing. You can't, this system is not a system that you just sit out there and forget it for 20 years. You do have to manage it just like you do your distribution system.
But if you lose your readings for 2 weeks, you don't, I mean, if you lose communications for 2 weeks, you don't lose the readings because they're still in.
comes back.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my neighbor across the house, his water meter is, here's the ground level. His water meter is down about like this. When they come and do the installation, are they gonna move that meter box up to eliminate that?
They'll make a determination of whether they need to or not. The general answer is no, unless there's something wrong with the meter base or the meter pit. They will use that return utility option where basically they say there's something beyond what we think is going to work. You guys need to come out and look at it. They may recommend we raise the bid. You know, they may recommend. I'm sorry.
We being who?
Water department.
Not Itron.
Correct. Itron will they'll make the initial attempt, but if they see anything in the field where they either can't get to the meter or they're afraid, you know, due to corrosion, that if I touch this pipe, I'm going to create a water leak, they'll return that to us.
Andy, you might alert the city because in my block, for whatever reason, a whole bunch of meters, water meters are way down. It's not gonna affect the electric. But there's a bunch of them that I personally know of where they're gonna be, the city's gonna have to come the expense to come back and put a new meter box or move it up or something.
And it really depends on the scenario and where you're at, because if are you in the LP&L territory or are you outside LP&L?
No, I'm gonna, I'll be sitting here.
That's true.
Shh, don't tell them.
Because, you know, in the mesh territory, you know, the water meters have the ability to talk to this, but they also talk to the local electric meter. And so the sensitivity to being down 6 inches below the natural grade, because, you know, if you envision this thing sitting here, it's radiating in a cone up. So as long as it has access to get there, it doesn't matter if the hill comes down like this.
No, that's not my point. I know that, but my neighbor's box gets filled up with dirt and debris.
Yeah, if there's inches of dirt on top of it, then that's a different scenario. Okay.
It does happen. It is happening.
Yep, it happens everywhere in South.
As far as access for plumbers, et cetera, I mean, they're gonna do the same thing. They're just gonna take the lid off. They're gonna have to be more careful with what they do with the lid, I guess. And they're just turn the valve, turn the water off.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's the same.
It's the same scenario, and it is a training issue. You know, managing the wires, not setting the lids down on the wires, are things that you continually reinforce and train with your workers. But you have a trained workforce that's the reason why you train them.
Are we gonna have some kind of instruction for local plumbers?
Well, most things gonna be more securely locked than the ones that are out there now. Most of them aren't locked at all.
Well, no.
They are not going to be locked.
Some of them are set aside a little bit. I mean, there's no real rhyme or reason.
So the water department has selected a very good lid, which is much heavier and much more robust than the current lid that they've been using.
I've noticed going to lawnmowers sure does a job.
Yeah, and you know, this guy And part of the problem with the plastic lids that are using today is if you get a strong storm, they'll float and then they'll dislodge or float away. The lids that we're going to be putting in as part of this project are non-floating lids that really, one, are much heavier, and two, are not of a material that floats. And it makes them more robust to stay in place, to fix in the meter pit itself.
So all of those, like our cast iron ones, those will just go in?
Not all of, but most of. Any cast iron that we keep will drill a hole and put in a remote antenna through that to make sure we get the performance. Ms. Stafford, I thought you had a question.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Number one, thank you for the response of the team and getting new crew in here, because I think it was very helpful, Dave, and that meeting to get us back on schedule. It looks like, if I'm reading this right, the water department is just 4 days for those 500, so it's a lot faster to do the water, or am I reading that wrong? Water department will do the 14th to 18th, and then, so it's only 4 days to do the water. Is that because it's in the alley and you don't have to mess with going in anybody's yard? Is that why it's so much faster, or am I looking at that wrong?
No, you're definitely reading the dates as they're printed, and then you see that it went November 14th through the 18th for water, and then November 20th through the December 11th for electric. That implies clarity that probably isn't quite precise, because we're going to be doing electric and water at the same time. Simultaneously.
So it's the same crew doing both. You don't
Yeah.
have a water crew and an electric crew.
For the initial installation, that is a true statement. When we get out to full deployment, we will have dedicated crews. Electric will be working ahead of water. But for this initial deployment, and go back to what we talked about originally, which is really that iterative process. So we want to install just a very few, make sure that the files and the information that has to transfer is working right, and then we'll go back out and install a few more. And really it depends. If we find a problem in one of the water files, for whatever reason we miss something and we have to correct one of the processes around water, we may go do a water installation to see if we fix that. Where if maybe it was electric, we will prioritize an electric install over that. And then we'll go do electric and we'll do water later. So probably more correct to show that as the 500 water and 500 electric during that entire window, rather than say 4 days for one and the other.
But like logistically, the water is probably a little bit faster because it is all in the alley. You don't have to go inside yards or anything like that for electric. Most of the water is all by the alley.
That is correct.
Access would be easier for water.
Access is easier for water, absolutely.
Other questions? Yeah, is that, you got a,
That's it.
You got a show and tell?
That's the end of the show and tell.
That's really impressive.
Yeah,
I had a concept in my mind of what those would look like and what was that. So that basically looks like what's already there on the electric meter standpoint. So it's pretty cool.
Great. As always, if there's more questions.
And it's probably a question for Andy. The old group of people that used to come and, protest for want of a better word about the meters. At what point are they going to get the opportunity to opt out?
They'll have the opportunity, if they call in now, we're keeping a list of the folks who called in.
Did you want to say?
We have the opt-out form available on the website, so if anybody does call in with any sort of concern, we also have an email set up. So once we have the request from them to opt out, we will put that on their account, but we will not charge them any we're not trying to keep any of those, we're just, if somebody's going to request, we're putting it directly on the account as soon as they, send that form in to us.
Well, those of us who've been around here a while, we know who probably least does for some of those people are, and I'm not suggesting we proactively contact at all. I'm just saying, probably we're gonna put some in, and we're gonna get a phone call, somebody saying, get this thing out of my yard, my brain is fine, or whatever.
So like you didn't look
Got
for
one. And we don't know who that is.
I'll say that we've gotten an indication of one or perhaps two, but we haven't officially received any forms from those individuals. So we don't have any official opt-out customers at this point, but they've indicated that they would do so. We're just waiting to see if they go through the process.
Will we ever do away with the whole opt-out thing? Or is that what every city
I wouldn't
does for
think we-
meters, they offer that?
I think our plan was to continue to offer that.
Just charge a fee and then
We hope that the fee will be somewhat of a deterrent for having a large number of opt-outs, since we don't believe there's any risk to them. So,
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you.
Anything else under 7, Mr. McCollum?
I do not have anything.
All right, well, if there's not any other questions or comments, let's go ahead to item 8. Presentation and discussion of financial and capital statements, financing options, audits, and financial policies, Lubbock Power and Light, relating to debt issuance issues, reserve account funding, cost allocation, revenue and expense projections, purchase power cost recovery factor, and customer metering, billing, and service issues.
I'll just have one slide today.
Okay.
Because since we are in the middle of audit, we typically don't present our full set of financials to the board because those are not in final form. And so you'll notice in your agenda books today, there's really only a few pages, mostly related to the capital program. And so what I wanted to point out today is that we are in the middle of the audit, preparing for that. The auditors that are changed this year, Weaver CPAs is the new firm that will be working with the city and LP&L on the audit, and which changed. BKD has been with the city for at least a decade, I believe, and so the change was made for this year. Weaver does a lot of municipal accounts and also a lot of electric utilities, so that was one of the reasons I believe that the city and Chad served on that committee to help in that selection process. But they'll be doing their field work at both LP&L and WTMPA right after Thanksgiving until about the middle of December. Then we'll begin their review of the financial statements really throughout the month, mostly of January, after the Christmas time frame. So we'll be working on all the aspects of our reports throughout that time frame. Weaver will then be back to give a presentation. We're hopeful to hit February the 5th for the Finance Committee of the LP&L Board on the 5th. That probably that morning, if that will work, we'll be getting with the Finance Committee to make sure that date might work for you and what time might work best. And then that afternoon, we will be presenting the audit to the city's Audit and Investment Committee. So try to hit them on that same day. Then on the 19th of February at our regular board meeting, we would expect a presentation from Weaver on the audit, and then the council meeting on the 21st, the entire city's audit will be presented at that time. So just to kind of give you an idea of when to expect that. And that's really all I have for this month. So.
Andy, is there some reason, particular reason the city changed, or they just put it on RFP?
I don't know that it's a bad idea to change every so often, just to get some fresh look at the financial. I think that was probably part of it, and so that the city just, and we usually, we like to use the same audit firm as the city. That makes things much more seamless, and so obviously Chad served on that committee. There was a committee set up at the city, so their finance folks and accountants.
Would it be feasible for us to have someone different?
You probably technically could do that, but I think it works much better to have it all done by the same firm. I think I don't really know if you could, because we are an enterprise fund of the city. I mean, we could, so we really are part, I guess you could have one audit firm do it for the entire city combined and a separate one do it for just LP&L, but it would be, there could be some room for conflict there possibly. So I think it makes a whole lot more sense. W2PA also hired Weaver at the same time. So all the entities went along at the same time.
Do you anticipate any reallocations or any community accounts generating any big difference than how we looked at the?
No, we don't anticipate really any changes at all. In fact, a lot of the preliminary questions from the audit firms have been very, very similar to what we've seen in the past from BKD. So we haven't prepared any different prepared by clients information than we really had in the past.
I think one of the good things about having Andy, Chad, and folks at the city is that we have probably one of the most accomplished city finance departments in the state. I would say that our financial statements always pass the blue ribbon test as far as the certified annual financial CAFR. It's always which is prepared by Andy and Chad and the other folks at the city. So the auditors here are going to do a lot less work than they might in some other locations.
And the city does employ several CPAs. We have Ranu, this is CPA, who she's really going to be leading the effort this year on that portion of the audit in conjunction with Chad and myself. But Ranu has been a significant addition to our team this year that will really help, and she's made a lot of progress already. So proud to have her.
So, very good.
So that's all for today, unless y'all have any more questions. That's all I have for finance.
Go ahead, Mr.
Amy, on the purchase power, we're still overdoing, which is certainly fine, but we'll move that quickly.
There is no change from what we presented to you last month. Because the board meeting was a week early this month, we just received the bill on Friday, and that doesn't allow us enough time to have all the numbers crunched to get a pass-through amount calculated for today. So really where what the graph you see there is what we presented last month. So we don't know yet the results of last month. That's correct.
Thank you.
And I think it's usually, as Andy said, we usually have just budget figures from now until February.
That is correct. So we, once we, because there's a significant amount of year-end entries that not only we're making, but the city's making, when it comes to fixed assets or the OPEB liability or all of those different significant entries. So those take a little bit more time to get all the final numbers. So we're waiting on all that at this point. I don't have about a preliminary balance sheet or anything even like that yet. So.
Just letting everybody know that it'll be a few months before we have our full-blown financial. Anything else under item A? Okay. Then, if there's not any other questions or comments, we'll go ahead to item 9. And that's to consider a resolution recommending to the City Council one appointment to the Electric Utility Board in accordance with Section 2.03.415E of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lubbock, Texas. So that would be to fill the remaining term seat that Mr. Rodriguez held. I would entertain motions.
Make a motion to recommend Edwin Butch Davis to recommend to the City Council for appointment to the Electric Utility Board.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Conrad, second by Ms. Stafford, to recommend to the City Council the appointment of Edwin E. Butch Davis to the Electric Utility Board. Any discussion on that recommendation? If not, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That's a unanimous recommendation. And we'll move on then to the consent agenda. That would be items 10, 11, 12, and 13. 10 is a resolution considering amending the electric utility board policies and procedures concerning annual reviews and compensation of board employees. Item 11 is a resolution authorizing the purchasing managers as designee to execute a purchase order with Texas Electric Co-ops for gas circuit breakers. Item 12 is a resolution authorizing the purchasing manager to execute a purchase order for a shield wire and overhead conductor. Item 13 is a resolution ratifying the execution of purchasing manager of electric utilities notice of cancellation of contract with Plasco Transmission Line Construction Services for the Southeast Oliver Transmission Line Construction. Is there any of these items that anyone wants pulled for individual discussion? Mr. Bowman?
I move we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Okay, motion by Mr. Bowman, is there a second? Second by Mr. Conrad. Approve items 10, 11, 12, and 13. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? Consent agenda passes unanimously. I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda, and so we will be adjourned at 1:50.